8 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I'm rushing to my electrical van, already late for a $3,000 job that could save my struggling business when I slam face first into a 6-foot privacy fence that wasn't there yesterday, built overnight around my entire property while I slept. I'm not talking about some neighbor dispute here, folks. I'm talking about being literally imprisoned on the land my grandmother left me by Delilah Thornfield, our HOA president. The kind of power junk-crunk psycho who measures grass with a ruler and hands out $500 fines for wrong mailbox colors. She claimed some bogus 1970s easement violation gave her the right to turn my home into maximum security prison. My security cameras caught her midnight crime spree. Hired crew working under floodlights like they were disposing of bodies. The smell of fresh-cut cedar and wet concrete hung in the morning air along with my dreams of paying rent this month. What would you do if you woke up literally caged on your own property by a neighbors from hell HOA dictator? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from because this exact nightmare could happen to you next week. But here's what Queen Delilah didn't know. I just inherited something that would turn her illegal midnight fence into the most expensive mistake of her miserable life. Let me back up and tell you how I ended up in this war zone. 6 months ago, I was Garrett Mills, a 45-year-old electrician drowning in Denver's messiest divorce. My ex-wife got the house, the dog, and half my business. I got the lawyer bills and a crash course and starting over at middle age. Then my grandmother passed and left me her 1940s craftsman home in Willowbrook Estates, Colorado. 3 bedrooms on 3/4 of an acre, the kind of original farmland lot they don't make anymore. My plan was simple. Renovate it as a memorial to the woman who raised me, flip it for enough cash to rebuild my electrical business, and find some peace in the Rocky Mountain foothills. What I didn't know was that I just moved into the personal kingdom of Delilah Thornfield. Here's what you need to understand about Willowbrook. The HOA formed in 1995 when developers carved up the surrounding farmland into quarter-acre lots. Property values shot up 40% in 2 years thanks to Denver's tech boom pushing families into the suburbs. My grandmother's house and 3 others like it predated this HOA by 50 years. Technically exempt from most of their petty rules. Delilah Thornfield, 52 years old, platinum blonde hair that defies physics, drives a white BMW SUV like she's commanding an invasion. She's been HOA president for 8 years, running Willowbrook like a personal dictatorship. This woman measures grass height with an actual ruler, folks. She's got more Ring doorbells than a security company, and she hands out $500 violation notices for having the wrong mailbox color. She's also a real estate agent, the kind who sees commission checks every time she looks at your property. And my grandmother's original farmland parcel, pure gold for luxury development. The assault on my senses started before I even saw her that first week. Overpowering gardenia perfume mixed with BMW leather hit me like chemical warfare. Then came the sound. Designer heels clicking across my gravel driveway like a countdown timer. I was replacing rotted deck boards when she appeared, clipboard clutched like a battle axe. "Mr. Mills," she announced, "no hello, no welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Delilah Thornfield, your HOA president. We have compliance issues to discuss." I set down my hammer and wiped sawdust from my hands, trying to be neighborly. "Nice to meet you. What kind of issues?" She thrust a certified letter at me with the enthusiasm of serving a death warrant. "Structure setback violations that shed." She pointed at my grandmother's old garden shed, its cedar siding worn smooth as silk by 60 years of Colorado weather. $2,000 fine plus immediate removal. I actually laughed. "Ma'am, that shed was built in 1963. It's grandfathered under every code since Kennedy was president." Her smile could have flash frozen a campfire. "Rules are rules, Mr. Mills. This is a community of standards." That's when I realized this wasn't about building codes. This was a land grab, pure and simple. After she left, I did some digging. Turns out Delilah had been showing my property to potential buyers for months, calling it a prime development opportunity coming available soon. When I ignored her bogus violation notice, the harassment campaign began. Daily wellness checks appeared on my doorstep. Anonymous complaints about property maintenance magically surfaced in city records. The woman was building a case against me, one fabricated violation at a time. What she didn't know was that I was building a case, too, and mine had actual evidence. 2 weeks after ignoring Delilah's shed violation, I discovered my electrician van was gone. Not stolen. Towed from my own driveway at 6 a.m. sharp by some recovery crew that moved like a military operation. Here's the beautiful part. They towed it under a brand new HOA rule that didn't exist 12 hours earlier. Turns out our beloved dictator had called an emergency meeting at 9 p.m. the night before. Democratic process at its finest. With exactly 4 people present, including herself, they voted to ban commercial vehicles from residential driveways overnight. The towing notice was timestamped 5:47 a.m. The rule took effect at 6 a.m. Either this tow truck driver was psychic or someone had advanced warning. When I called the impound lot, the guy couldn't hide his amusement. Thornfield Recovery Services, he said. That'll be $480 cash only. I asked who owned the company. Lady who called it in owns it. Family business, she said. Real proud of the efficiency. Mini twist time. Delilah didn't just violate due process. She committed fraud. See, I've been documenting everything with security cameras since day one. My footage showed her photographing my van at 11 p.m. with professional surveillance equipment, then making phone calls from her BMW at 5:30 a.m. while the tow truck waited around the corner. She'd planned this military-style operation before the rule even existed. But here's something every homeowner should know. HOA rules can't be applied retroactively, and targeting pre-existing property uses without grandfathering protection violates state law. One phone call to a lawyer and suddenly I had grounds for a federal civil rights lawsuit. I filed complaints with the state regulatory board and posted the security footage on our neighborhood Facebook group. Democracy dies in darkness literally at 9 p.m. Apparently, I captioned the video compilation. My phone exploded. Mrs. Chen messaged first. She fined me $1,200 for an unapproved bird feeder that's been there 8 years. 3 other neighbors shared similar harassment stories, all targeting people without family support or legal knowledge. While researching Delilah's violation history, I stumbled across something delicious. Her own property violated half the rules she enforced. Decorative fountain violated the noise ordinance. Pool house built without architectural approval. And her precious BMW regularly blocked sidewalks during her inspections. But here's where my counterattack got nuclear. I contacted every contractor in her violation files and offered free electrical inspections. Turns out 5 families had been scammed into unnecessary emergency repairs by companies that paid Delilah referral fees. The next morning, she escalated. Building inspector showed up claiming anonymous safety concerns about my electrical work with Delilah standing in my driveway taking notes like a court stenographer. After the inspector left empty-handed, all my work was properly licensed. Delilah stepped closer, her gardenia perfume mixing with morning coffee on her breath. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she hissed. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules or property values. This was about power, money, and a systematic scam targeting vulnerable homeowners. And I just painted a target on my back. The diesel exhaust from that morning's tow truck still hung in the air like a declaration of war. 3 days after my Facebook post exposed Delilah's towing scam, the city building inspector showed up unannounced with a clipboard thicker than a Stephen King novel and our HOA president riding shotgun like his personal attack dog. Anonymous tip about dangerous electrical work, he explained, though his shifty eyes suggested someone had made this tip very unanimous. Have to investigate all safety complaints. Delilah positioned herself behind him, pointing at my grandmother's 1960s electrical panel like she was identifying a war criminal. That's clearly not up to current code, she declared with the confidence of someone who'd confused electrical boxes with jewelry boxes her entire life. 20 minutes later, I had a stop work order and mysteriously missing permits. Apparently, my bathroom renovation paperwork had vanished from the city computer system, about as likely as Delilah developing actual human empathy. But the real sucker punch came that afternoon. 3 electrical clients called to cancel major jobs. Safety concerns, they mumbled before hanging up faster than telemarketers. That's when the mini twist hit like a freight train. My contractor buddy Jake got suspicious and recorded the next safety warning call on speakerphone. "This is Delilah Thornfield from Willowbrook, HOA. Came that saccharine voice. "I wanted to warn you about Garrett Mills. He's been cited for multiple violations and unsafe practices. We've had to issue emergency orders. If you need a reliable electrician, I have someone much safer who offers very competitive rates." The recording was pure legal dynamite. But here's what made it nuclear. Jake recognized the safer electrician's name. It was Delilah's brother-in-law, charging 40% above market rates for substandard work. Here's something every small business owner should know. Business interference is a serious tort. If someone's deliberately sabotaging your livelihood with false claims, you can sue for actual damages, plus punitive awards that make their harassment very expensive. My attorney dug into Delilah's history and uncovered a systematic scam. She targeted 5 other homeowners with similar tactics, forcing sales to her real estate clients while steering their electrical work to family members. Previous victims settled quietly under NDAs, which explained why nobody warned newcomers about Hurricane Delilah. The corruption went deeper. She was collecting referral fees from contractors, inflating HOA violation fines to pressure quick sales, and using her access to city officials to expedite problems for targeted properties. While I dealt with legal paperwork that gave me more paper cuts than a cardboard factory, the harassment intensified. Anonymous calls flooded city departments about unlicensed work and safety hazards. The fire department visited twice in 3 days, finding absolutely nothing wrong except my growing collection of violation notices. But Delilah's greed finally overplayed her hand. I started catching her showing my property to prospective buyers without permission, complete with professional photography equipment and staged marketing shots. She was literally advertising my grandmother's house while I still lived in it. The stop work order meant no bathroom completion, no house sale, no business restart. She was systematically dismantling my financial future one fraudulent phone call at a time. That evening, surrounded by legal documents and the smell of cold coffee from endless attorney meetings, I realized this wasn't random harassment. This was a calculated business model. And I was about to become the biggest mistake of her predatory career. The rough texture of those legal papers reminded me that sometimes the best defense is a nuclear offense. The trespassing campaign started innocently enough if you consider armed real estate invasion innocent. Wednesday morning, I'm drinking coffee when I spot Delilah conducting unauthorized property tours of my backyard like she's running a museum exhibit called Future Development Opportunities. Private property, I reminded her, and the embarrassed couple trailing behind. Community safety inspections, she countered, flashing a laminated card like it was federal ID. We're ensuring neighborhood standards compliance. The couple fled, but Delilah lingered to photograph my electrical outlets and slip her business card under my door. Market assessment $285,000 as $340K with improvements. Call for immediate consultation. She was literally appraising and marketing my grandmother's house while I still lived in it. The inspections became daily invasions. Different buyers each time, all promised exclusive previews of upcoming listings. I watched Delilah stage photos near my shed for before shots in her renovation marketing. The woman was building a real estate portfolio using my property as the centerpiece. Then surveyor stakes started appearing like orange tombstones around my property line. The survey crew showed me work orders from Property Management LLC, another Delilah shell company. They were establishing boundaries for community access improvements, which sounded about as legitimate as a $3 bill. Delilah's master plan unveiled itself during an impromptu yard conference. She produced a 1970s plat map claiming ancient easement rights gave the HOA authority to improve common access areas. "Your construction mess affects property values," she declared. "We're installing protective barriers for community aesthetics." The fence company struck at 2 a.m. Friday like a special ops unit. I woke to post-hole diggers and cement mixers grinding through darkness. Harsh floodlights turning my bedroom into an interrogation chamber. By dawn, a 6-foot privacy fence imprisoned 3 sides of my property. Here's the diabolic genius. The only exit led through an adjoining lot that Delilah's LLC had quietly purchased months earlier. She'd turned herself into a medieval gatekeeper controlling my access to the outside world. But here's the mini twist that blew this whole operation wide open. When police arrived for my trespassing complaint, they discovered the fence violated 17 different municipal codes, blocked Federal Postal Service, and created fire safety violations that triggered automatic FBI jurisdiction. Delilah had been so focused on trapping me that she'd accidentally committed federal crimes. I immediately called my attorney for emergency injunctions while documenting everything on video. But the immediate reality was devastating. Van trapped, work cancelled, grandmother's house turned into minimum security prison. The smell of fresh concrete mixed with treated lumber created an industrial fog that neighbors could smell 3 blocks away. Local news arrived after viral social media posts, and suddenly my driveway became a media circus. Here's the beautiful irony that had me laughing despite everything. The fence crew realized they just participated in multiple felonies. Their crew chief started taking evidence photos for his own legal protection, admitting Delilah had lied about property ownership and construction permits. While researching property records for my lawsuit, I uncovered the smoking gun. Delilah had purchased that access lot specifically to create this choke point. Purchase documents showed months of planning to systematically strangle my property rights. But as I stood there, surrounded by illegal barriers, breathing diesel exhaust mixed with sawdust and pure malice, something clicked. This wasn't just harassment. This was Delilah's nuclear mistake. She'd committed federal crimes on camera while creating a media spectacle that would expose her entire corruption network. Sometimes your enemies build the perfect traps for themselves. Saturday morning, trapped behind Delilah's illegal fence with nothing but time and fury, I finally decided to dig through my grandmother's old filing cabinet. I'd been putting it off for months. Too many painful memories mixed with dusty paperwork and the lingering smell of her lavender sachets. But desperate times call for desperate measures. Buried under insurance policies and tax returns from the Carter administration, I found a manila envelope marked property rights important in my grandmother's careful handwriting. Inside was the original 1943 property deed, yellowed with age but perfectly preserved. And there it was in black and white legal language that made my heart race. Perpetual access easement granted across all surrounding properties for farm equipment, livestock, and agricultural operations, said easement to run with the land in perpetuity. My grandmother hadn't just owned her 3/4-acre lot. She'd retained legal rights to cross every piece of property between her land and the public road forever. Here's something every homeowner should know. Perpetual easements are like legal gold. They run with the land forever and can override newer property restrictions. Even HOA rules that came decades later. But the financial bombshell was even better. While researching property records to understand my easement boundaries, I discovered Delilah's entire empire was built on borrowed money and desperation. Her LLC owed $89,000 in business loans with monthly payments of $3,200, more than her real estate commissions could possibly cover in this market downturn. That BMW leased. Her picture-perfect house, second mortgage, even her HOA president's salary was only $400 per month. The woman was drowning in debt while playing real estate mogul. The default clause in her loan documents was pure poetry. If access rights to her development properties were legally challenged, the entire debt became immediately due. She'd borrowed against future development value that depended on controlling my land. My weekend in the county records office revealed the bigger picture that made everything click. Delilah hadn't been randomly harassing me. She'd been systematically targeting original homeowners with valuable development potential. Multiple HOA rule changes over 8 years were specifically designed to force sales to her shell companies. She'd already pushed out 12 families using identical tactics: fabricated violations, utility harassment, permit sabotage, and social isolation. Each time she'd swooped in with generous buyout offers right before families faced financial ruin. My property was the keystone of her entire plan. Without controlling my lot, she couldn't assemble the track needed for luxury development. Her investor partners were expecting a 20-unit townhome complex worth $8 million. No wonder she'd gotten increasingly desperate. The musty basement air of the records office mixed with the brittle texture of decades-old deed papers as I photographed every document. My grandmother's faded ink signature on that easement felt like she was reaching across time to help me fight this battle. But here's the nuclear revelation that changed everything. My perpetual easement didn't just guarantee access. It granted legal authority to cross any property between mine and the public road for agricultural operations. Since Delilah's access control lot sat directly in my easement path, her entire fence strategy became legally meaningless. I could drive a tractor across her precious manicured lawn any time I wanted. And there wasn't a damn thing she could do about it. The power dynamic had just flipped completely. I wasn't the victim of her land grab. I was the owner of legal nuclear weapons that could destroy her entire business model. And she had no idea what was coming. Monday morning, armed with my grandmother's easement deed and a burning desire for strategic revenge, I started assembling my dream team. First call went to Rebecca Santos, an attorney who specialized in property rights and had a reputation for making HOA bullies cry in courtrooms. Perpetual agricultural easement from 1943, she said after reviewing my documents. Oh, this is Christmas morning. When do we start the demolition? Next up, Miguel Torres, a surveyor who could map exact easement boundaries with GPS precision. Your grandmother was smart, he whistled, reviewing the deed language. This easement cuts right through Princess Delilah's control lot. She basically bought herself a very expensive driveway. My contractor buddy Jake volunteered his heavy equipment crew for fence removal services, while my electrician friend Tommy offered portable generators for 247 security lighting. Time to teach some HOA respect. Jake grinned. Here's our legal strategy breakdown. File emergency motions to enforce easement rights. Demand immediate fence removal as unlawful obstruction. Counter-sue for business interference and emotional distress. Then request punitive damages large enough to send a message about HOA overreach. But we needed perfect timing and overwhelming evidence. Here's a property hack most people don't know. Old easements often include reasonable use clauses that let you do way more than just access, like utilities, parking, even temporary structures for agricultural purposes. I installed professional security cameras covering every angle of my property, creating time-stamped logs of each violation and trespass. Every phone call got recorded, every written communication saved, building a comprehensive evidence file that would make prosecutors weep with joy. The community organizing started quietly. I contacted other families Delilah had targeted, sharing legal research about HOA overreach and constitutional violations. Mrs. Chen hosted coffee meetings where we created secure communication networks outside Delilah's surveillance state. Miguel's survey revealed the fence crossed my easement boundary by 15 feet, a federal trespassing violation. Multiple city codes were broken, no permits, wrong setbacks, blocked utilities, and emergency access obstruction that made the fire marshal's eye twitch with regulatory fury. Then came my favorite part, psychological warfare with agricultural equipment. Every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, I borrowed Jake's diesel tractor and exercised my legal easement rights. The beautiful rumble of that engine cutting across Delilah's perfect lawn while she watched from her kitchen window was pure therapeutic gold. I'd park temporarily in the easement zone, unload equipment storage boxes, and document her increasingly frantic phone calls to city officials. The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with fresh legal documents and laser printer toner became my favorite morning aromatherapy. Our timing strategy coordinated major actions for maximum public visibility. Court hearings scheduled during Delilah's prime real estate hours, fence removal plan for weekends when neighbors were home, and media outreach timed with legal victories. I researched every aspect of Delilah's business network, clients, partners, licensing history, and professional compliance records. We prepared evidence for state real estate board complaints that would make her career as toxic as her personality. The financial pressure points were delicious. Her loan payments due the 15th of each month. Real estate license renewal coming up and investor partners expecting development progress reports she couldn't possibly deliver. Here's the humorous part that kept me entertained during long research sessions. My easement included rights to temporary livestock grazing for agricultural purposes. I seriously considered renting goats to maintain grass in the easement zone just to watch Delilah's reaction to finding sheep in her precious manicured paradise. But the secret weapon that made everything perfect was buried in the original farmland covenant right of first refusal on any adjacent property sales. I had legal authority to match any offer on surrounding lots, effectively blocking Delilah's development dreams, even if she somehow survived the fence fiasco. The rough texture of surveyor stakes marking my territory felt like planting victory flags. Every document we filed, every boundary we established, every legal motion we prepared was another nail in the coffin of her corruption empire. By Friday afternoon, surrounded by evidence boxes and the sweet smell of impending justice, we were ready to launch the most beautiful legal counterattack in HOA history. Delilah had built herself a trap. Now it was time to spring it. Delilah's desperation reached new lows the following week when my electrical panel mysteriously suffered accidental damage during her crew's fence maintenance. Power outages hit right in the middle of critical renovation work, and a suspicious water leak appeared in my basement after another unscheduled city inspection. My security cameras caught figures in dark clothing creeping around my property at 2 a.m. But they were smart enough to avoid direct footage. Amateur hour sabotage with professional paranoia. Then came the bribery attempt that proved how cornered she'd become. Tuesday afternoon, Delilah knocked on my door, wearing her most convincing fake smile and carrying a manila envelope thick enough to choke a horse. "Garrett, I've been thinking about our situation," she purred, suddenly using my first name like we were old friends. "I have a very generous offer that could solve everyone's problems." She slid papers across my kitchen table. A purchase agreement for $150,000 cash, $50,000 above current market value. "My client needs a quick closing for a family emergency," she explained. "Cash deal, no inspections, close in 2 weeks." I asked who the buyer was. "Private investor. Very motivated." When I declined, her mask slipped just enough to reveal the desperation underneath. "You're making a mistake, Garrett. Legal costs will eat up more than this property's worth. Why bankrupt yourself fighting the inevitable?" The mini twist came that afternoon when my attorney's private investigator traced the buyer back to another Delilah LLC shell company. She was essentially trying to buy my property with her own borrowed money using fake urgency to pressure a quick sale before I discovered my easement rights. But the professional intimidation campaign escalated simultaneously. Anonymous complaints flooded the electrical licensing board claiming unsafe work practices and code violations. Subpoenas arrived demanding my business records and client files. Harassment disguised as regulatory compliance. Here's something every small business owner should know. Utility interference becomes a federal crime when it crosses state lines. And most utility companies operate across multiple jurisdictions, making FBI involvement automatic. The utilities warfare was Delilah's most vicious attack yet. The water department arrived to disconnect service for non-payment, showing bills that mysteriously transferred charges from her property to my account. Gas company claimed meter tampering reported by a concerned neighbor. Even my internet service got downgraded to dial-up speeds through system errors. I responded by installing backup generators, water storage tanks, and satellite internet, turning my property into a self-sufficient fortress while documenting every sabotage attempt with multiple camera angles. Delilah hired a private investigator who followed me like a discount spy movie, taking photos that showed up in anonymous safety concern reports to city officials. Fake social media accounts appeared overnight, posting one-star reviews across contractor websites, claiming I was unreliable and dangerous. The surveillance escalation included professional telephoto lenses glinting from across the street and mysterious cars parked outside my house during work calls. The smell of chlorine from pool chemicals mysteriously spilled near my foundation created a chemical warfare atmosphere. But here's where her desperation backfired spectacularly. She organized emergency HOA meetings about neighborhood safety, distributing professional flyers claiming I was a dangerous individual who attracted undesirable elements. She pressured neighbors to sign petitions demanding my removal while threatening their property values would crash if the situation continued. My counterintelligence operation documented everything. Rebecca's private investigator uncovered Delilah's financial connections to city officials, revealing a corruption network that profited from forced property sales. We traced campaign contributions, consulting fees, and family business relationships that explained how she'd operated with impunity for years. The insurance fraud attempt was her sloppiest move yet. Mysterious storm damage appeared on my roof overnight, followed by an adjuster who noted the damage pattern was inconsistent with any recent weather. Security footage showed figures on my roof during a clear night, while Delilah filed neighbor complaints about dangerous falling debris. I let her believe the tactics were working, appearing increasingly stressed in public while secretly building an airtight legal case. Every phone call, every trespass, every fraudulent report got documented and filed for the spectacular courtroom finale I was planning. The rough plywood covering mysteriously broken windows mixed with generator humming created a siege atmosphere that neighbors couldn't ignore. Local news reporters started investigating HOA abuse stories, and a documentary filmmaker expressed interest in the corruption angle. By month's end, Delilah had committed enough felonies to stock a small prison, all while thinking she was winning. Delilah's final campaign launched like a desperate nuclear strike against reality itself. Professional flyers appeared on every doorstep in Willowbrook, featuring my photo alongside warnings about a dangerous individual threatening community safety. The design quality suggested she'd hired an actual marketing firm to destroy my reputation. False police reports multiplied like a virus. Threatening behavior, property vandalism, suspicious activities, all filed by anonymous neighbors who somehow shared identical handwriting with our HOA president. She even attempted to get a restraining order based on fabricated evidence that would have been laughable if it wasn't so malicious. But here's where her corruption network finally exploded into view. My PI discovered Delilah's brother-in-law wasn't just running the tow truck company. He was the city building inspector who'd been sabotaging my permits. Building approvals that normally took weeks got mysteriously delayed for months, while Delilah's LLC properties sailed through the same office in record time. The money trail led straight to City Hall. Campaign contributions traced back to the mayor and 2 city council members disguised as consulting fees and community development donations. We're talking about a systematic racketeering operation that made old-school mob tactics look amateur. That's when Rebecca dropped the legal nuclear option. A federal RICO lawsuit alleging criminal conspiracy across state lines. Here's something most people don't know. RICO laws aren't just for organized crime. They apply to any pattern of illegal activity that affects interstate commerce, including corrupt HOA operations that involve mail fraud and wire transfers. The FBI started their investigation on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Delilah's world was crumbling faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Local TV ran an expose titled HOA Hell, When Neighbors Become Nightmares, featuring my fence siege as the prime example of citizen resistance against corruption. The story went viral on TikTok with hashtags like #FenceGate and #HoCorruption, generating millions of views and thousands of supportive comments. Other victims emerged from the shadows like survivors of a natural disaster. 15 families came forward with identical harassment stories, forced sales, fabricated violations, utility sabotage, and financial pressure campaigns. The HOA board experienced mass resignations, and property owners demanded emergency elections, plus forensic audits of missing funds. But Delilah's final desperate move was pure criminal stupidity. Death threats left on my voicemail and anonymous social media accounts, while her associates escalated to nightly vandalism of my property and attempts to sabotage my electrical van. The smell of spray paint fumes from overnight graffiti attacks mixed with the sound of police sirens responding to false alarm calls created a war zone atmosphere that neighbors couldn't ignore. Shattered glass from broken security lights crunched underfoot like evidence of a crime spree. My counter-surveillance operation captured everything in high-defin glory. Hidden cameras recorded Delilah directing sabotage operations from her BMW. Phone calls proved conspiracy with city officials, and financial records showed bribes disguised as legitimate business expenses. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Her LLC defaulted on the first loan payment just as criminal charges were being filed. The bank began foreclosure proceedings on her properties. Her real estate license got suspended pending investigation, and court orders froze personal assets to preserve restitution for victims. Here's the beautiful irony that had me laughing despite the chaos. Delilah's perfect lawn died from stress and neglect while she focused on destroying mine. Her Ring doorbell surveillance network turned against her as neighbors switched sides, and that precious BMW got repossessed during a live TV interview. Emergency city council meetings were called to address the corruption allegations, with media announcing live coverage of the federal investigation. The community organized, demanding accountability, setting the stage for the most spectacular public downfall in HOA history. The community garden that replaced Delilah's former HOA office provides fresh produce for the local food bank while serving as a living memorial to resistance against tyranny. Our monthly Know Your Rights workshops teach homeowners about easement research, HOA documentation requirements, and federal jurisdiction triggers that can turn local harassment into serious criminal charges. Here's the key takeaway. Always check property deeds for historical rights that might protect you. Record everything with photo and video evidence. And remember that when corruption crosses state lines, FBI involvement becomes automatic. Delilah's downfall was complete and poetic. 8 years federal prison plus $500,000 restitution, real estate license permanently revoked, and personal bankruptcy that revealed hidden assets she tried to protect. She became a cautionary tale in HOA management courses nationwide. Proof that absolute power corrupts absolutely, especially when wielded by small-minded tyrants. The financial recovery helped 15 families rebuild their lives. Our class action lawsuit recovered $2.3 million for affected homeowners, while transparent management reduced fees by 40% and rebuilt community trust through actual fiscal responsibility. Property values stabilized after the corruption exposure, proving that ethical leadership creates more value than fear-based intimidation. The annual Freedom Fence Festival celebrates our victory with local food trucks, live music, and property rights education booths. Proceeds support legal aid for other HOA abuse victims fighting similar battles across the country. The festival's success attracted visitors from neighboring states dealing with their own HOA corruption, creating a network of property rights activists who share strategies and resources. That documentary fenced in fighting HOA tyranny, won awards at film festivals, and inspired congressional hearings on nationwide HOA reform. My relationship with attorney Rebecca Santos evolved beyond professional collaboration into something beautifully personal. The shared intensity of fighting corruption together revealed character depths that peacetime relationships never explore. Family visits to the renovated house now include both romantic dinners and strategy sessions for helping other victims. The Community Resource Library established in our former HOA office provides free legal consultation for property disputes, while online forums connect activists across regions facing similar challenges. Children's laughter in the community garden where Delilah's intimidation headquarters once stood creates the sweetest sound of victory. Last week, I received a call from a Texas homeowner facing similar abuse. Property seized through eminent domain fraud for developer profit. The corrupt mayor and HOA president there are using identical tactics Delilah pioneered. But now we have a proven playbook for federal prosecution. The community is organizing a road trip to support our Texas neighbors because corruption networks spread like cancer when good people stay silent. Drop a comment below and share your own HOA nightmare story. You're not alone, and there are legal ways to fight back. Document everything. Research your property rights and remember that bullies count on isolation and ignorance to maintain power. If you enjoyed watching Delilah get exactly what she deserved, hit that subscribe button because next week we're exposing how a corrupt mayor tried to steal an entire neighborhood through fake eminent domain, and how one mechanic's discovery of a 150-year-old treaty brought down a $50 million development scam. Remember, Your property rights matter. They're worth defending. And when communities unite with proper legal strategy, even the most powerful corrupt officials can be brought to justice.